Hi everyone, I'm Gina K from Gina K Designs and your host of Stamp TV. Today on Stamp TV, I'm going to show you a cute card project featuring the brand new Autumn Wishes Stamp TV kit, and I'm going to do the masking technique. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to make this card project. First, you're going to need some stamps, and I am using stamps from the stamp set Friends Till the End, and that is part of the new Autumn Wishes Stamp TV kit. And I'm going to use the little owl, the little raccoon, the little wheelbarrow, and I'm going to use the Need a Lift stamp. Then you're going to need some coloring medium, and I'm going to use the Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. Now I'm going to tell you the numbers that I'm going to use. For blues, I'm using BT1 and BT2. I'm using GB8 and GB9. I'm using GG1 and GG3, and I'm using the colorless blender pen. Then I'm going to use some of the Memento Tuxedo Black ink, some adhesive, and for cardstock, this all comes in the Autumn Wishes kit. I'm using some of the ivory, some of our dark chocolate, then I have an ivory heavy base weight piece that I made a card base out of, and I'm using one of the patterned papers from the Autumn Wishes patterned paper pack. Now, for the sample that I made before, I used a different piece of paper, so I'll show you how they look once I'm done this card, and you can see the two different designs that I chose. Okay, so to begin, we're going to do a little bit of masking. Now, one thing that I like to do, especially when masking this type of design, is I like to use really thin paper to create my mask. So I would suggest just some basic 20-pound copy paper, any kind of really thin paper. This way there's not too much of a lump to try to stamp on top of. I'm going to start with the wheelbarrow, and I'm going to ink that up with some of this Memento ink. And then I'm going to stamp that down here at the bottom of the card. And when you're stamping this, you want to try to get the, excuse my head if it got in the way there, you want to try to get the wheel and this part both looking like they're kind of at the bottom. So you don't want it to go too much this way or too much this way. Okay, then I'm going to ink up the raccoon. I already got ink on me. Okay, now for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of copy paper and I'm going to just put the copy paper right up against the black line of the wheelbarrow. Now you see I'm letting the black line show through. And let me just ink this again. I probably should have done that part first so this wouldn't dry out. And then I'm going to make sure that he is very straight. So he's going to be sitting this way. And I'm going to stamp him right there. There we go. Now he's sitting in the wheelbarrow. See how easy that is? I'm sure a lot of you have already done masking, but for those of you who haven't, it's pretty easy to do. If this was a more intricate design, I would have stamped it first on the copy paper and trimmed it out, and then laid it on top. But since it's a straight line, you don't have to go through all of that. Just use a regular piece of paper, and you can put anything inside this wheelbarrow. Now for the owl, I want him to be in this picture too. And I am going to stamp him, and I might have to get my head in the way, but I'm going to stamp him so his little feet are standing on top of the raccoon's head. Like that. Isn't that cute? Okay. So now it's time to do a little bit of coloring. And I'm going to start by coloring the wheelbarrow, and I'm going to use the GG8 marker, and I'm going to add a bunch of color right onto this part here. Now I am no alcohol marker coloring expert at all. I took some certification classes and stuff like that, but honestly, unless you practice all the time and unless you work with all the techniques, just getting the certification isn't enough. You really have to work at it. And I don't. I just color the way I like to color. So you can try these techniques. One thing I will tell you is that my techniques are very easy because they're not really anything fancy. So, okay, so I've colored that in. Now I'm going to color with the GB9. I'm going to color this part up here. Just want that to be a little bit of a darker brown. And I think I said GB9 and then GB8. I think there's GG here because they're the grays, and then the GBs are some of these browns. Okay. So I'm just being a little bit careful not to go too close to the edge because these kinds of markers do have a tendency to bleed a little bit when you're using a more porous paper, and our ivory cardstock is a bit more porous. Now I'm going to use the GG1, and I'm going to make this gray down here. And I didn't do that in the first one, so but I want to put a little bit of kind of like a metal look. And then I'm going to use the GG3. Let's find the right end here. And I'm going to color this little tire or wheel. And you could make this black, but there's something about making it a gray color that still allows the line around the outside to show up, and I think I like that. I'm going to go back to GG1. Just color this part in here. Okay, so now that I have GG1 out, I'm going to start coloring this little guy gray. And I'm going to use the lighter gray for here and for his tail. I love his little expression. And then we'll color his face. These are so fun to color, and they're not really that hard to do. Get his ears inside there. Okay. Now I'm going to go with the darker gray, and that is the GG3, and I'm going to color his body. Kind of like the two tones. And I'm going to add a little bit of texture to all of this using the blender pen, so I'm not doing a lot of fancy blending right now. I'm just going to add texture. And this has a nice little tip, so you can get into some pretty tight areas, but you just have to be a little bit careful. Okay, and we'll just do the outside of his ears. Kind of highlight those with that dark color. And his nose. Okay, so now let's color in the owl first. So make sure this is the darker one, so I'm going to do his wing, the darker brown. And we'll do the top of his head too with this same color. And you want these guys to look a little bit furry and a little bit feathery for the owl, so that's where the blender pen is going to come in. Now I'm not real fancy with it. There are some artists that do amazing work making fur look very real. I just want to add a little bit of texture, and if you're just starting out coloring or you feel like you're not that skilled at coloring, you probably are right where I am. And now I'm going to go with that lighter one, the GB8. And then I'm going to add some of that blue in there too. It's kind of a blue-green. I'm going to add that into the eyes. Now some of you are very into watercoloring right now, and you certainly don't have to use the markers to do this. You can use watercolor paints, or you can use water-based markers. Okay, so I'm going to grab these, and I'm going to add a little bit of the BT2 right around the eyes inside, just to kind of make them glow a little bit. Like that. Keep this marker out here. You can also add a little bit of the BT1 in there if you want. Kind of blend it to a lighter shade. There we go. All right. Now with that blender pen, the first thing I want to do is I want to add some planks of wood. So I'm just going to do that by kind of drawing lines with the blender pen. Like that. Then I'm going to use that darker brown color, and I'm just going to do a couple little tiny little dots here and there to look kind of like nails. Very small little dots. And then I'm going to kind of dab over those a little bit with some blender pen just to lighten them up and smear them a little bit. So it's just a little bit of texture in there. See that? And if you want, you can make some planks going this way too. There we go. Okay, now for the fur, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do little squiggly lines. Just like little U's or W's all over. This is just going to create a little bit of texture. I'm going to do that all down here too on his body. Like that. And then I'll do a little bit in the lighter gray part too. And I'm going to do the same thing on the owl. Just these little tiny U's or W's going across. Just to create, kind of follow along the lines of the feathers here. Do that same kind of texture. And I'll do that right around here too. And I really want to kind of lighten up his chest. And you can see how that just added a whole bunch of texture into that. Very simple. Now I'm going to grab the BT2 and I'm going to do a thin line around the entire perimeter. And that's going to make this whole card kind of glow, this whole image. And it'll also help if there's any imperfections or any going outside the lines. It'll kind of blend together with that teal color. This is a very tealish blue, almost like an aqua. I'll go in there. And you can see it gives it more dimension, and it just makes the image kind of pop off the card a little bit more. And you can always use the dies to cut these images out and place them any way you want as well, but sometimes you just want a nice flat card, but you want it to have some depth. So once I get done going around the outside, and in there too, the outside with this brighter one, I'm going to go back over it with the lighter one, and you'll see how that kind of softens things up a little bit. But this is kind of fun to do, and it's very easy. It really doesn't require any skill at all. Okay. And now we'll go with that lighter one. And we'll just add a little bit of softness around the outside there. Kind of makes it like bleed out to like a fade. And that's kind of pretty. Isn't that fun? And then the assembly of this card is super simple. This is a great little autumn card. If somebody needs a little pick-me-up, you can pick them up in this little wheelbarrow. And you can also do this kind of thing with watercolor, going around the outside with a very, very pale wash of paint. All right, so there's my image. Now I'm going to adhere this image onto this piece of dark chocolate cardstock. And we'll put that right there. Okay. And then I'm going to adhere these two pieces together. I really like these patterns in the pattern paper pack. They're fun, very whimsical. All right. And then this panel is going to go on top of my Ivory Card Base. Go right in the center. There we go. Now we're going to make a little greeting here. So I'm going to use the Need a Lift greeting. And we'll stamp that right in the middle there. And that is going to go on top of this little piece of dark chocolate. And if you ever need something to do, you could cut out a bunch of these and just stamp little greetings and have them ready to go on any card. All right, and then the layout we're going to do is we're going to put this here, and this is just going to kind of overlap a little bit off that pattern paper. So we'll stagger this a little bit off to the side here. Like that, so it's not right in the center. And then we'll add the Need a Lift right here. So you can see for this one I used this leafy background, and for this one I used the flower pattern paper. That's kind of the grungy flower. And I like them both. This might be a little bit more masculine if you're sending it to a guy. This might be a little bit more feminine if you're sending it to a girl. But both of them are really cute and very autumny. I hope you've enjoyed today's Stamp TV kit project. Stay tuned to Stamp TV for lots more inspiration featuring the Autumn Wishes Stamp TV kit, and thanks so much for watching.